So I know that summer is basically over, but honestly, Carley Fortune is forever. Hey everyone, so I am going to be doing a very highly anticipated video, something that has been long awaited, something that I have gotten so many requests to finally do, and here it is. I'm doing it, and I'm going to be talking about all of Carley Fortune's books. I'm going to be giving my opinions, which ones I love, which ones kind of missed the mark for me, where I think you should start, and why you should read these books. So I guess we should just start off by saying that Carley Fortune is an extremely popular author. She is definitely up there with a lot of the really popular adult romance authors. So this isn't necessarily me being like, read Carley Fortune, she's like an underground indie writer, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like that. It's just like there are so many books in this kind of Carley Fortune cinematic universe that I feel like it can be a little bit daunting for people to kind of like jump in and figure out where they want to start, which book might fit their taste a little bit better. And I really find these type of videos helpful for that reason. And honestly, even as like a fan of these authors with these huge backlists, these like spanning, and with so many books in their arsenal, it is a lot of fun to watch these videos and just like kind of get to talk about and chat about your favorite authors and your favorite books and your opinions on these books. So I'm super excited. I hope that we can have a really fun discussion in the comments. And so without further ado, I should just start off with the fact that yes, Carley Fortune mainly writes romance books that are set during the summer and that kind of have like really strong summer vibes. However, I feel like these are books that you can kind of read any time of year, especially if like say you live in like a colder climate or like it's the dead of winter or whatever and you just need a bit of sunshine, you need a bit of that like summer energy in your life. These are the perfect books to pick up and just get injected with that summer feeling. It's so good. And one of the things that I love the most about Carley Fortune's writing is that her setting and just her like the feeling of these books is so strong that you really feel transported into the story whenever you're reading these books. Like I love that so much. And also Carley Fortune is coming out with a new book next year, and that is Our Perfect Storm, and that comes out May 5th 2026. So I definitely feel like this is a perfect lead up into preparing for that book. So let's just go through kind of like the timeline of her books, like the first book that she's published and the latest book that she's published. So the first one is Every Summer After, which I actually have a copy of, and this is the first book that she published in 2022, and then she published Meet Me at the Lake in 2023, and then she published This Summer Will Be Different in 2024, and then her latest release came out this year, and that is One Golden Summer, and that released in 2025. So it's kind of been like a release every single year. It's kind of something similar as to what Emily Henry does, where she just releases a new book every single year. And honestly, as someone who has written books before, who wants to be a published author in the future, it is so incredibly inspiring, but also like impressive that these authors can publish a single book every single year. That's insane to me. That blows my mind. So kudos to Carley Fortune, especially with how great these books are and how good they get. Like with every single release, I feel like they get better and better. So that's really impressive to me. So I think that we should start off with the first book that she ever published, and that is Every Summer After. And this is kind of an important book, mainly because not only does it start off all of her like adult romance books, it also is tied directly to one of her other books, which is One Golden Summer. So these books are kind of tied together. This is basically the first book. This is technically the second book in this very kind of like interconnected series. So starting off with Every Summer After, this is a really great place, I believe personally, to start your Carley Fortune journey, especially if you are not really sure where to go. These kind of things always remind me of Star Wars, where it's like, do you start at episode 4, which is technically like the first movie that was ever released, and I think it's a great place to start. Or do you start at episode 1, which is like technically the beginning of the story? So it really just depends on the type of reader that you are and what you are looking for. So if you are looking for a book that is really easy access and that is just like going to kind of ease you in to who Carley Fortune is as a writer, I think that Every Summer After is the perfect place to start, and it's personally where I started. However, I will say that I think because this book is such an easy access point that it can kind of start you off on a little bit of the wrong foot, especially if you are the type of romance reader that reads a lot of romance. It can kind of feel a little bit like, yeah, I've read this before. This is really no different than any other romance novel, and it can kind of give you a little bit of the wrong idea of what to expect from Carley Fortune. However, I think that if you are not a very strong romance reader, like you don't read a lot of romance, you're not like super well versed in the type of romance books that you can expect, I would say that this would be the perfect book to start with for a non-romance reader. Basically, this book follows the female main character Persephone, and she is really close with these two brothers and has kind of always had a little bit of like a flirtationship, a little bit of a connection to these brothers. But now that she's an adult, she has kind of had a lot of separation from not only the like summer place where they would always vacation, but she's also had a lot of distance from the two brothers, and so she ends up having to go back for their mom's funeral, and things kind of start to rekindle between her and one of the brothers. I feel like this is actually so perfect for the end of The Summer I Turned Pretty. So if you're kind of having like a The Summer I Turned Pretty hangover with the end of the entire series, but like, you know, the final end, I would say this would be the perfect book to kind of follow that up with, because it is so similar to The Summer I Turned Pretty and definitely has that kind of vibe, but for adults, which I think is really fun and a little bit more of like a fresh take on it. Was this my favorite Carley Fortune book? No, but it's her debut, and I think that it kind of introduces you to her style and introduces you to like her ability to create these really complex and beautifully executed characters. However, I feel like just like story-wise, it is just a little bit basic, and because it has such strong similarities to The Summer I Turned Pretty, it can just kind of feel like any other type of romance, if that makes sense. It just feels very basic. But honestly, like I said, really fun, a great place to start, especially if you're a non-romance reader. I think it will definitely ease you into the entire Carley Fortune universe. So the next book that she published was Meet Me at the Lake, and this is another one where I feel like we're starting to see a little bit more of the complexities of Carley Fortune's writing. We're just still not quite there with the storytelling. I feel like her first two books that she published have really strong characters and really strong and complex relationships. It's more so the plot that seems to go towards the wayside and doesn't seem quite as developed as the rest of the book. So with Meet Me at the Lake, this one follows the female main character, and she and her single mom used to live on the lake, and her mom owned this sort of like cutesy little resort on the lake, and the female main character has never really felt a connection to working at the resort or owning the resort, but when her mother passes away, she is kind of forced into the position of taking over the resort, and so she has to return to the lake, and she kind of starts to create these relationships and these ties, and it starts to feel like she kind of has to take over this resort. And this book deals a lot with themes of grief and themes of responsibility, and I feel like with Meet Me at the Lake, you really start to get introduced to the idea of Carley Fortune really bringing in these like harder, more heavier topics into her books, which I really appreciate. I feel like with this book, she starts to give a little bit more meaning to her romance books that are just more than following this romance, following this relationship, which is something that I personally really look for in romance books. Is I don't want to just read about the romantic relationship between these two characters. I also want a little bit more depth. So if you are also looking for that, I feel like Meet Me at the Lake is a really great place to start. But yeah, I feel like with Meet Me at the Lake, it does kind of suffer from a lot of the similar issues that Every Summer After also suffers from. So I feel like story-wise, they are both a little bit on the weaker side. However, I feel like with Meet Me at the Lake, she does definitely improve upon her more complex themes. And then we get to the third book that she's published, which is This Summer Will Be Different, which honestly I think has to be my favorite out of all of her books. I had such an incredible time reading This Summer Will Be Different. It is so much fun. Basically, this book follows the female main character, and she has been best friends with this girl for a really long time, and she frequently visits her and her family on Prince Edward Island. And we get this flashback to her first visit to Prince Edward Island, the first time she ever hung out with her friend and her family. And so upon her first visit, she ends up meeting her friend's brother, and she actually doesn't know that it's her friend's brother. She thinks it's just some like random guy. And they end up hitting it off and kind of hooking up. And then she ends up finding out that actually that was her friend's brother, and it gets kind of awkward and they don't really want to talk about it. They don't really want to bring that in to the dynamic, and so they decide to act like they never met each other and kind of brush it under the rug. However, years later, when her best friend is getting married and it's like the wedding is a week away, her friend ends up kind of getting not necessarily cold feet, but just kind of like feeling a little anxious and a little frazzled, and so she ends up running away to Prince Edward Island and ends up calling the female main character and letting her know and being like, I need you here with me, I can't do this without you, and I'm feeling really nervous, and you know, whatever. She kind of has a little bit of a mental breakdown, and so the female main character goes to Prince Edward Island in order to convince her to come back and get married, and you know, everything is going to be great. However, once the female main character is there, she kind of starts to rekindle this romantic relationship between the female main character and her best friend's brother, and so there's just like a lot of complexities at play. There's a lot of really interesting family and friend and romantic dynamics at play, and it's just so much fun. And this book just truly captures summer in a bottle for me. It's like, it is so perfect, and it really just makes you feel like you are on Prince Edward Island. You are right there, and it's just, it's so beautifully executed. And if you are a fan of Anne of Green Gables, this is the book for you, because you would know that Anne of Green Gables takes place on Prince Edward Island, and this book definitely pays a lot of homage to Anne of Green Gables. So if you are a fan of that book, highly recommend getting this one. I don't know if this is necessarily one that you start with, but it's definitely going to be one of your favorite books. I just know it. Like, it's so good. The emotions are so beautiful and you really feel them, and every single character is so layered and complex, and I just love This Summer Will Be Different. It is so good. I cannot emphasize enough how good of a book this is. Truly, it was like, I think it might be her magnum opus, but honestly, her books do kind of get better and better. Like, objectively, they get better and better. So even though this is my favorite book, I don't know if it's objectively her best book, but it just elicited so many emotions within me that it just personally has to be my favorite book. It is so good. And I think that this is a perfect way to come full circle, because like I said towards the beginning of this video, this book and this book are very closely tied, and so now we finally get to talk about One Golden Summer, which is kind of the sequel to Every Summer After. So remember when I said that there were two brothers in this book? This one follows the other brother, Charlie, and the female main character, Alice, and their romance together, and I absolutely loved it. You genuinely cannot really read this book without having read this book. I mean, technically you can do anything. However, I would highly recommend making sure that you read this book first. There are a lot of spoilers for Every Summer After in One Golden Summer, and so I feel like you're going to be missing out on a lot of really good information if you don't read Every Summer After first. However, I really enjoyed One Golden Summer, and I think objectively it might be her best work, because truly, like I said, her books do get better and better. And I think that as much as I love This Summer Will Be Different, the male main character in One Golden Summer, Charlie, he is just everything that I want from a romantic hero. He is so good, so charming and funny, and he really just makes you fall in love with him. And there were so many moments when I was reading this book physically and just like blushing and giggling and kicking my feet and being like, I have not read such an incredible male main character romantic hero in so long. Like, this guy is just everything to me personally. Charlie was incredible, and it's so funny because I remember reading Every Summer After and I never felt like Charlie necessarily stood out to me in any way, but reading this book, it's crazy how much he stands out and crazy how incredible of a character he is, and just I love him so much. Like, I think I fell in love with him faster than the female main character did which is crazy. But I really love this book so much, and like I said, like, I feel like the themes for Carley Fortune's books just get better and better and more interesting and more complex. And basically this follows the female main character, Alice, and she is a photographer, and she has always loved spending summers at the lake and visiting her grandma and kind of like getting to take pictures and really hone her craft at the lake. And she ended up taking one of her best pictures at the lake, and one of the pictures that has like really truly made her famous and has really opened a lot of doors for her as a photographer. But now as an adult, she's felt like she has really lost herself within her photography jobs that she takes up, and also her grandma recently had kind of like a health scare, and so she's going to take the summer, kind of, you know, reconsider her life, reconsider her career, and also take care of her grandma. And so she goes back to the lake and she ends up meeting Charlie, who has also been helping with her grandma. And at first she's kind of like hesitant about Charlie. She's not really sure if she can trust him. She's not really sure if she even wants to hang out with him or be his friend, but he is very insistent and very like, we are gonna be best friends, like we're gonna have a great summer, we're gonna have a great time together, I'm really funny and you're gonna love me, and it's great. So they kind of end up getting into this friendship and having a lot of fun, and he promises that she is going to have a magical summer and that she is going to have the summer of kind of like her teenage dreams. And so I ended up really loving this book. It was so good and such like the perfect book to take with me on my summer adventures. And yeah, I feel like these books definitely need to be read together, not necessarily one right after the other, but you cannot start One Golden Summer without starting Every Summer After. Okay, so I know that summer is technically ending, however I feel like you can read a few of these books at any time of the year, and I think this is especially important because her newest book comes out in May, so technically it comes out in spring. So you kind of have to get prepared for her new release during the fall, winter, and spring. So I feel like if you're going to read any of her books outside of summer, I would personally go with either Meet Me at the Lake or This Summer Will Be Different. I feel like those two books, while they definitely scream summer, they're very obviously summer romances. I feel like those are the two books that definitely could exist outside of summer and be really fun reads to pick up in like the fall or springtime. I feel like if you kind of want to go with like you're reading this book in December or January, it's so cold and you need something that's going to warm you up, I would probably go with either Every Summer After or One Golden Summer. Like, you could do a like kind of like twofer with these two books and read them both during the winter, just to kind of get you in that summer mood if you're really missing the sunshine and the beach and being out in the warm weather. I think those would be really good to pick up during the winter. So yeah, I feel like that's everything that I have to say about the Carley Fortune books. I really tried to go as in-depth as possible without like spoiling anything and without giving too much away, because truly you're going to want to go into these books not knowing too much, but being kind of enticed to read them and be like, ooh, these sound really interesting. And honestly, as somebody who picked up Every Summer After a few years ago, back when it first came out, and wasn't super impressed and never really thought that I would pick up another Carley Fortune book, I am honestly so glad that I gave her a second chance and decided to pick up her newer books, because honestly, I think I would have been missing out on a lot by not picking up One Golden Summer or Every Summer Will Be Different or whatever. Like, I truly would have been missing out. So I'm so glad that I gave her a second chance, and I highly recommend, like, if you read Every Summer After and you were kind of not impressed, you like didn't really think anything of it, you just kind of decided it wasn't the book for you, that's totally fine. I still think that you should at least give one of her other books a chance. So if you were that kind of reader, highly recommend picking any of her other books up. And I'm so excited for her new release next year. I'm hoping that I can get an ARC. I'm hoping that I can get my hands on it as soon as possible, because I know I'm gonna love it. So I'm so excited. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope it convinced you to pick up any of her books, or I hope it was just fun to get to talk about one of my favorite authors, hopefully one of your favorite authors as well, and maybe even one of your future favorite authors. So I think I want to do this with other authors. I think that'd be so fun, like to get to talk about Emily Henry or Ali Hazelwood or Talia Hibbert, or even like outside of the romance genre, we could go with Sylvia Romano Garcia, or you know, whoever. I have so many favorite authors and so many authors that I've read a lot of their backlist, so I feel like it'd be a lot of fun to get to talk about other authors in these kind of like dedicated videos. So if you are interested in seeing that, definitely let me know down below in the comments. Also, if you have any recommendations for authors I should kind of like do a spotlight video on, definitely let me know as well. And yeah, let's start talking about some Carley Fortune books in the comments. Let's talk about our favorites and who our favorite characters are, who our favorite ships are. I think it'd just be a lot of fun. So yeah, let's start a discussion in the comments, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Storygraph, Goodreads. All of the links are going to be down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!